Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Increase Office 365 Adoption. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. You're welcome to submit questions at any time using the chat window on your screen. We'll address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. If we don't manage to answer all of your questions, someone will follow up with you shortly via email. We'll also make a recording of the webcast available to you within a couple of days. It's my pleasure to introduce you to today's speakers, Ryan Thomas, CEO at Timlin Enterprises, and Ron Johnsen, VP of Technical Services at Harmony. Ryan is the founder and CEO of Timlin Enterprises and former solutions architect for projects and services in SharePoint and Office 365. With over 20 years in the technology space, Ryan's focus is building frameworks and solutions to help his customers create and maintain true digital transformation using modern collaboration tools. Ron, the VP of Technical Services at Harmony, is responsible for driving Harmony's customer-centric methodology by building a world-class customer services organization and working with our customers to define best practices to ensure their successful implementations of Harmony. Ryan, please get us started.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate the kind introduction, and welcome aboard, everyone. Hopefully, everyone who's joining is in a weather-safe zone this morning. We're in the eastern Massachusetts area and expect to get hit with another nor'easter, so wish us luck there. Anyway, appreciate everybody taking the time to join today. We will try to make good use of your time, and we'll jump over quickly to talk a little bit about who we are. All right, hope everybody can see the slides. So a little bit about us, and again, I won't spend much time on this, but Timlin is a Boston-based Office 365 and SharePoint services company. We do not sell products, we sell services. And we have evolved into providing true sort of digital transformation, user adoption services, and we've called that Office 365 Center of Excellence, which we'll go into a little bit today, not in super detail. And we really help customers use Office 365 as a platform. Obviously, we build things occasionally, but generally it's really a people-focused approach to success. And we sort of cover the gambit all the way from the strategy and vision element, governance, all the way down to the administration, architecture, support, and build. We do a lot of training. We do a lot of contextual sort of specific training for your implementation and desired outcomes as opposed to generic out-of-the-box canned training. And some of the big things we've been working on a lot lately, there's a huge demand for intranet and collaboration solutions to really drive that adoption play, and a lot of data governance and security inside this platform just because of what's going on in the world these days. And Ron, you want to talk a little bit about Harmony?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. So Harmony is a software provider or an independent software provider, and we provide solutions that enhance the overall experience on Office 365 and all the Office 365 tools. So we have over 1,000 customers, enterprise customers, companies like Canada Post, Citibank, Hilton Worldwide, and nearly 2 million users on our solution today. We're a gold partner with Microsoft, as you would expect with this kind of solution. It integrates tightly with Office 365 and have won numerous awards over the past couple of years. I'll turn it back to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. And I'm a big fan of Harmony. I'm a longtime user of it, and to the point where it would be tough for me to live without it at this point. So I'm excited to hear what Ron has to show us a little bit later.
Excellent.
All right. So while we're talking about the agenda, which will be very, very quick, we're going to throw a quick poll question, try to get an idea of some of the applications, features that you're using. So you'll get a couple of poll questions here in the immediate future, and we'll go over those. So while you're answering that, real quick, the agenda only has 4 items on it. One, we just want to cover some of the challenges people are facing in user adoption with Office 365 as a platform these days. And this really comes from the experience we have working directly with a lot of different customers, various sizes. So it's the common denominator of what we're seeing, and hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the places you can concentrate on trying to look at for resolving. I talk a little bit about how we approach those issues, and sort of how we have a framework and a concept that we try to drive through that, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And how it's kind of a process, how you overcome obstacles and hurdles, and it's all about adaptation because the software under the covers changes, and that's
So let me put up the results for you real quick. There you go.
It's actually a really good opportunity for you to look at Harmony and for Ron to talk about. All right, do we have, oh yeah, here we go. Poll results, okay. So almost everybody uses Exchange, which is expected, 92%. 77% use SharePoint Online. Over half of you are using Teams, which is great, and then 58% other, and then 4% not using Office 365. Interesting. Whoever that is or whoever you are, I'd love to hear from you and find out what your sort of goal is for attending this webinar, even just having a candid chat afterwards. All right, moving on. Okay, so what are the challenges that slow and prevent user adoption in Office 365? Obviously, your mileage may vary, but these seem to be the common ones. And one of the big ones we get a lot, and one of the reasons why we partnered with Harmony to offer this webinar, and this was sort of maybe follow-up conversations, is that the underlying service platform changes on a fairly regular basis. In the old days, you install a piece of software and it's good for 3 or 4 years, and you control the patching and the upgrade schedule, which is good and bad. With Office 365, Microsoft's releasing new software on a regular cadence. They're investing a ton of money in this, and maybe just when you get your training and stuff ironed out, bam, they hit you with a new look list or library, and you've kind of got to go back and do it again. So that definitely causes a little bit of trepidation with the end users, and you need to inspire confidence. So that's one of the things that we've uncovered. The other is the sort of lack of expertise in IT, and it's not really IT's fault. We don't necessarily ask IT to become collaboration or Office 365 experts for all the features and capabilities. That's a full-time job, and for multiple people actually, to know the ins and outs of all the applications in Office 365, which tends to lead to the result that we're only going to use a really small amount of this because it's the only thing that we really know and understand. And speaking of that, the limited end user knowledge, right? If IT doesn't really have the expertise or the time to train or show people what the capabilities are, there are a lot of people I talk to, really smart people, almost on a daily basis, that still think Office 365 is just email and a place to store documents. And anybody that's kind of gone a little bit farther realizes there's a whole other suite of applications and services and capabilities out there that you should at least be aware of. You don't have to use all of it, but it could help build a better solution, a better mousetrap for you. Having knowledgeable experts available to help you with your problems, and basically that lack of confidence problem, a good support structure. And we also see a significant amount of sort of poor training, right? Hey, we rolled this thing out, let's throw some training in front of some people, let's put 100 people in a room and give them the generic training that we bought online or something like that, and then there you go, they know what they're doing. And we don't find that works at all. Another aspect is IT. They're busy, they set up, they configure, they put together some initial efforts, and then they call it a win and they walk away. So that's not their fault. It's kind of, they have another project in the pipeline, they have to move forward, so they got to get this done and get out of the way and get something else done. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that digital transformation is not really a project, it's a process, and it doesn't happen with an IT project and then it's complete and off you go, especially with a changing platform. The other thing is, we've really shifted more towards a business approach instead of an IT approach. We still have to work with IT, but we really want to get to the end users and talk to them about what's going on. We're finding that solving simple problems as opposed to solving IT problems is gets a lot more traction when it comes to getting business users engaged and using the platform. Once they start using it a little bit, they explore a little more, and it's building blocks, right? I call it like the Lego system for Office 365. And the classic concept of solving perceived problems instead of actual problems, and that's not necessarily an easy thing to uncover, but it comes from working with the business users. And sometimes, I'll know it when I see it. It's like a piece of art, and just because you've taken requirements doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it right, which is why it has to be a sort of a consistent feedback loop. And then the big one for me is the last two are really important to me, which is no social or cultural integration. It's just a set of features. Well, that's not really how you're going to get best use of the platform. I think getting people involved using it, and we'll talk about some options for doing that from a social and collaboration and integration with your corporate culture perspective is really where people start to get a lot of traction. And finally, not having a plan. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. You start it, you finish it, you give yourself a high five, pat on the back, and you go, all right, we got this done, and then we move on to something else. And there's nothing that you've set aside to continue to work on to help actually create that integration component with the rest of the company. So that's it for challenge of printing user adoption. All right, so real quickly about our approach. I kind of started the left-hand side of this, and it is a full life cycle. Oh yeah, sorry, we're going to do a poll. Yes.
Before you speak about the approach, let's just see which Office 365 apps you're using most often.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
I was getting too excited.
Because it's exciting.
Anybody that knows me knows that I love talking about this stuff. All right, polls coming in. All right, it's not completed yet, but we're getting a picture here. Oh, there it is. It finished. Okay, interesting. So 68% Outlook. So I didn't get to see the poll. So Susan, you just remind me of what exactly the question was, so I make sure I respond to it correctly.
The question is, first we were asking what you use. Now we're saying which one of the apps are you using most often?
Most. Okay. All right. Good. Okay, that makes sense. So overwhelmingly Outlook, not surprising, almost 70%, and then about 25% SharePoint, which again, like I said, most people think it's email and document management. And obviously anybody that knows SharePoint pretty well on this webinar knows that it's a lot more than document management, but a lot of people just use it for that. And really small percent, we're talking low single digits for Teams, even low percentage for OneDrive, which is surprising. SharePoint and OneDrive are so tightly integrated that I expected to see more OneDrive users. So I'm curious about that. And 82% of you responded, so thank you very much. Okay, back to these slides. All right, so what's our approach to kind of manage this user adoption play? And first of all, it's a full life cycle. And what we mean by that is it's a start and a finish from a strategic down to a tactical approach. And different organizations are going to have different needs, but essentially we want to think about it holistically. We also try to really push the end user aspect of it. Again, keeping on that framework or that frame of mind helps prevent it from slowly just becoming an IT exercise again. You're thinking about how it fits in culturally with the organization and how you get people to collaborate. And again, further in that same mindset is the business analysis piece. Come at it from solving business problems, not solving IT problems. We in classic IT people, and I, frankly, I'm one of them. So this has been a tough psychological battle for me, is not to come at it from that perspective, not to come at it from how do I immediately go configure something to solve your problem. Instead, it's talk through and get feedback. So the real high level approach is it has to be deliberate. We're not just throwing stuff out there. We're thinking about what we're going to do first, which is why it's kind of important to do at least a high level vision and strategy and sort of a governance play, because you want to know what you're targeting. So find out what people need by having those discussions before you just start flipping switches, turning on features and saying, there you go, I gave you all the tools. And what I tell people all the time in sales meetings is that when they get mad about SharePoint is when you see a novel and it's the greatest American novel, people love it. And then when I try to sell you that novel, I give you a piece of paper or a ream of paper and a pen and say, here you go. You got all the tools you need to, you got to write the novel. And that's kind of what SharePoint is. It's just a platform. And Office 365 is the same way. And they give you a little bit of guidance, but you kind of have to design your own solutions. So it really starts with vision. And we have to talk to the whole team. So I don't believe in just sort of, taking 3 IT people in a room and saying, here, we're going to solve all the problems in here. That's why I love governance, because it gets 6 or 8 people from outside the just IT team engaged, and they can voice their opinion. They can become part of the project, part of the solution, and you get a much different perspective from a lot of these people when you actually go out and talk to them and include them in the process. The next big one is the rinse and repeat, defined proactive regular activities. And what that really means is we do a set of activities on a cadence every month or ongoing, right? They involve everything from scheduling meetings to specific research to specific follow-ups with people based on other activities that are defined. So each customer has kind of a different set of needs, obviously, but we try to build this playbook, which I'll talk about a little bit later, that we cover each month to make sure we're covering all the bases. And it really is supposed to be a intentional methodology to get everybody learning about what's going on at an organization. And the big thing for me is it's the term cross-pollination. And it's so important that somebody brought up to me a couple weeks ago. They said, don't you hate it when you have somebody working on your house and you have 3 different people coming, and the carpenter comes in and he didn't talk to the plumber. And so when the plumber comes in, you have to tell him all the stuff that this other guy did. And then the next guy comes in and you have to be the person to manage all that. We don't want the customers to feel that way. We want to be the construction guy, the plumber, whatever it is, the electrician, and we want to centrally discuss all those activities with them. So when they show up at the house, they have already talked to those people and know exactly what needs to happen, and they display that sort of confidence in understanding your particular home and what you need to have done. And that is a set process of sort of collecting information, aggregating it. We talk about it both internally with our customers. We analyze that, figure out what we need to do, and then we communicate that back out and make an action plan. And that's that rinse and repeat process. And if there's anything that you do, it's the last item on this list, which is training and support and kind of like actively monitor what's going on. If you say, I don't have the budget to do a governance plan or vision or too much strategy, I mean, you can talk about that for a couple hours and get some of it done, but really make sure people are supported. So if people need to be supported on with knowledgeable folks, not just help desk that doesn't understand Office 365. This is the critical one. It kind of starts there, even though it's the last of the tactics. That's what people interface with every day. That's where they need the most help. And I firmly believe that there is really no user adoption without an effective ongoing support strategy. So that's why there's no hiding the fact that that's where a lot of our work comes in, which is expertise, day to day, working with the end users, making sure that they have what they need, and they don't end up going to use Dropbox instead. All right, so how do we do it? Well, we've called it, a good friend of mine from a long time ago said, you build the crank and then you turn the crank, right? And the expertise is in building the crank, and then turning the crank can kind of become an exercise. And it's not quite that that cut and dry, but we look at it as the playbook approach, right? We build the playbook and then we do the playbook and then we revise the playbook on a regular basis based on gaining knowledge. And we break it down into what we call pillars. And the reason why we call it pillars is just because they support the whole effort. The whole effort is support user adoption, the center of excellence. And without one of the pillars, you lose stability. It doesn't mean that the whole thing will come crashing down, but you do need enough of these activities that are addressed to make sure that you provide an effective solution. So vision and strategy, right? This is thinking at a high level about what you need, when you need it, why you're doing it. And somebody, one of our customers said to me one day, he said, and I quote, "If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there." And that doesn't inspire confidence on the path to digital transformation. So it's kind of important to me that you think a little bit, and this doesn't take a lot of time to sort of think about what you want to accomplish as an organization, and then start to roadmap out when you're going to get there, and then you can socialize that so that people actually have some awareness about what you're trying to get done. Excuse me. So requirements and governance is kind of the next stage in the strategy evolution. So we're kind of moving from strategy to tactics. So what does the organization need to do, right, or need to do to actually move that needle? Who's going to be part of the ownership? How will we implement it? How will we make sure it's managed? Are there any policies, guidelines, and procedures that we need to uncover? And how do we define roles and responsibilities? A lot of places without governance have a lot of problems, and we see too many people where these whole solutions are owned by one IT person, and that person is too busy doing other things, or they leave and the whole operation dies in the vine. And that can be prevented by spreading the wealth out and having a committee of people that only have to meet once a quarter. It's not a huge time commitment, and it certainly isn't a huge time commitment up front. And it really helps set the stage and shows people that you're serious about caring about this. And frankly, you can't get user adoption without caring about this. So I'm going to assume that everybody that's joining the webinar cares about user adoption, knows the value of it, which is why I didn't go through the value of user adoption, and it's just looking for some of the ways to get going on it, or maybe they pick up some tidbits. Okay, the next pillar, architecture and design. So once you figured out what you're going to do and sort of the rough structure of how you're going to do it, now you have to design a solution. And this will be very dependent on the particular organization, but it will be based on taxonomy, metadata, site structure, what applications that you plan on using because of what needs that you've uncovered that you have, what you're, and it harmoniously works with the rest of the pillars because you need to know what you're able to support. So you don't want to design and build something that is unsupportable, right? Same thing with governance. You don't want to have a policy that you can't enforce. And so, we help sort of work through those issues with a lot of our customers if they don't have, quite the expertise to do that. The next big one, training. And so I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We believe really strongly in contextual training. And what I mean is we don't just buy some video from a third party and show it to you and talk about it. We build our own training materials. They are short 30-minute sessions with a small group of people. They're designed to be personal and also based on your particular implementation. So it's all designed to create intended behavior, and it's repetitive, right? Because the platform will change, your policies will change, the training must adapt to that in advance. It shouldn't be reactive, it should be proactive, right? Training needs to be updated and then redeployed. And so we have kind of a process by which we do that with our customers under this model. And it's kind of basically a regular training cycle. And we look at what's going on within the organization to figure out what needs you have. For example, each month the training person will meet with the support administration architecture team, and they'll go over any tickets or issues they've heard or roadmap changes where Office 365 is involved, and they'll decide, okay, like we've got 10 requests all for this issue. We may have a design problem, or we may have a training issue, or we just may have some confused users. Let's get in front of that, and let's get that training either updated or get that out in front of people, when our training comes up next month. So we kind of do that for you as opposed to being reactive and waiting for it to become a problem. And then obviously administration and support. It's huge. I don't need to go into too many details on that. I think everybody knows what that is. There's still some administration that needs to be done in Office 365. Anybody that's an admin knows there's activities on the back end that need to be performed. Obviously, you're not doing patching and service packs and upgrades, but you do have to monitor your tenant and the roadmap and know how those changes impact your end users and communicate those effectively to everyone else. And obviously, good support is second to none. So I don't need to go into that too much. I think anybody knows that. When they've called AT&T or Verizon and they've gotten the good rep and then they've gotten the bad rep, they know the difference between the two. And it absolutely changes your whole impression of an organization simply by one or either of those phone calls. Okay, and then I won't go into this too much, but we have these set defined monthly activities that I talked about. It's a little bit of our IP, how we do this. It's all about evaluating changes, continuing to analyze the business. You'll see that on almost every slide because I want to hammer that home. Analyze your business needs, not necessarily your technology needs. And the real magic, like I don't want to steal from Steve Jobs, but the real magic is when all of these things work together harmoniously and people are talking to each other, they're communicating it with the end users and the customers, and they're a couple of pages ahead of what's going on so that they can display that confidence and that ability to sort of maintain the change control process for the end user and the customer. All right, and my last slide is kind of an easy one. It's a nice segue, and it's really all about adaptation. And as you've noticed, everything is about building the crank, turning the crank, and then you need to adjust the crank over a period of time, right? Things are going to change. You're going to read, the one I've been using lately is access services going away. We had a couple of customers that had some small things built in access services. Well, they needed to make sure they were aware well in advance that access services was being deprecated in Office 365, which is too bad. I thought it could have been a great platform if Microsoft continued to invest in it, but they didn't. So someone needs to make sure that any applications that were there get ported off, pushed to other locations. People need to get trained. The architects need to get involved to make sure that the new design fits in with the overall structure. Not a ton of work per se, but it still needs to get done, or else some group of people will get left in the lurch. And so as those changes occur, you need to be ready for them. And as those changes impact your whole process, you need to refine the crank over a period of time. So a couple of key tidbits is, make sure that you only deliver what you can support. So it's like a properly engineered solution is the way I look at it. If what you can train, you can administer, what you can support and govern, you should release those features first. So help people solve these problems with these certain elements and make sure you've got it covered and you got it wired tight, because that will display confidence to the end user so that when you release the next item, they don't say, oh yeah, IT just kind of willy-nilly threw that out there and they didn't have a game plan for it, there was no training, they didn't know how to support it. That's not going to get them to say, oh great, like next time something comes out, forget, I'm just going to use Dropbox instead. So keep it small and keep it repetitive, right? It's a roadmap. It's okay. Once we're good at this, we're gonna provide a solution for teams, and we're gonna think through it first before we just hand it to the end users. That will reduce sprawl, and the platform will keep changing. And so, as I mentioned, your goal is to recognize those changes in advance and see how those adapt to your needs, both current and changing needs. You may find that the platform has changed and it uncovers a whole new set of opportunities for you, like the release of forms, right, for surveys, for anonymous surveys, or for the educational community in the platform. So you want to make sure you know what's out there, what's coming, and sort of disseminate that and talk about it internally. And our big one is require feedback from the customers, even if we have to schedule meetings, even if it's a 15-minute, hey, I just wanted to check in about that flux capacitor that we built for you last week. I want to know how it's going. I really need some critical feedback because our goal is to make it better for you. It's not a fire and forget exercise. And I'm huge into measurements because it's that concept of something measured is something watched, and something watched is improved. And it's not necessarily a cut and dry thing to do, but I think it's really important. And continue to socialize your message. Don't be afraid of change. There are a lot of IT people that are afraid of change. And I get why, coming from IT world, because it means there's a whole bunch of uncertainty in work and potential for disaster and the 2 a.m. phone call. I get that. But if you see it coming and you plan for it and you kind of map it out, it's not nearly as scary. And all that leads to identifying the opportunities to really improve the business, right? That's what it's all about. That's why we start with vision. You look at the top and you say, what are we trying to accomplish here? And you always map it back to that. Does this opportunity help push the whole process forward about why we're trying to do this? And that's really it for me. So hopefully you guys at least got some ideas. I know it's high level, and I'm happy to talk about this with anybody in more detail. But I hope you got some value out of it. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ron. And before I do that, it's a good segue into how you can now use software to kind of manage some of that front end change. And I'm excited to hear what Ron shows the product.
Great. So thanks, Ryan. And as Ryan said, we're going to take a look at Harmony in a second, and I'll walk you through the product. But let me introduce kind of our approach to this in driving Office 365 adoption. So as I mentioned earlier, Harmony is a software company. We provide solutions that enhance that overall Office 365 experience. And the way we do that is by bringing a sidebar in the solutions into the tools that people are using. So as you saw on the poll questions earlier, the predominant messaging tool today, and I think we all can agree with this, we spend probably way too much time inside of Microsoft Outlook. But if you bring Teams, if you bring OneDrive, if you bring your SharePoint team sites that people are using, you bring Skype integration into these tools, it makes it easy for users, familiar for users, and you break down some of those barriers to change. So from here, from the sidebar, you can easily drag and drop emails and documents. You can share links instead of sending attachments. You can automatically capture emails as records. Okay, so if you need to reach out to a colleague to drive a collaboration cycle, it becomes a simple click to integrate or to raise a conversation with that colleague or look up their SharePoint profile. So, or to continue a conversation, take a team-based conversation and expose that to the organization through Yammer. So we'll take a look at all this in a second. We'll also take a look at some of our new technology where we're starting to extend the Microsoft Graph and add topics to it and help, again, not only drive collaboration and adoption, but help people discover content across all these disconnected tools. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to change presenter so I can grab the screen and show you this. All right, so I noticed in just the folks attending today, and again, thanks, as Ryan said, thanks for attending and taking the time out of your snowy day if you're in the Northeast there. I noticed some familiar faces or names out there. So as a quick introduction to Harmony, Harmony is this sidebar, and this is our primary solution. We also offer a web-based solution that plugs into the OWA app and some of the Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and mobile. But today we're going to focus mostly on the desktop app around that. as I mentioned earlier, you can, as a sidebar architecture, and we architected this in this way to help drive adoption, is the goal here is this is your window into your collaboration space, while your personal space remains all your inbox, your folders, your calendar that you manage with Outlook. So that separation helps people engage more in, okay, I need to take this email and put it on a Teams site, or I need to put it in Microsoft Teams. So it really helps you with that, driving that. You can always, as a sidebar, I can minimize this so I can regain my real estate. I can bring it back. From just a technical or a feature perspective, I can register multiple sites. So you can see here I have access to my Office 365 site. Here's an on-prem site. Sites I'm following or favorited throughout the web UI are available. And as I mentioned, not only do you get access to your SharePoint Online and on-prem SharePoint sites, but you also have access to OneDrive and your teams and groups. So let's take a look at I want to walk through kind of a couple scenarios today, and one is kind of a life cycle of a document. So if we think about this, we typically start by kind of consuming or capturing some of our ideas, thoughts into a personal document. So let's go over into, and we're going to go into our favorites here. And favorites in Harmony give you a way to kind of customize and refine. So there's this big world of Office 365. Maybe I was on it with a client yesterday that had hundreds of site collections and all that. But typically, as an end user in my business role, I'm going to use some commonly used or reuse a lot of sites over and over again. So favorites is a great way to refine and customize that view. So I'm going to go into my OneDrive here. And this is when we start to talk about this kind of consistent, familiar interface. So as soon as you get in there, you start to notice that this looks a lot like File Explorer, a lot like what we've been using for years on our desktop. So that familiarity helps, again, drive that adoption. So I'm going to take this test plan here, down here, and I can right-click on it if I want to show preview. So I have all my actions that I want to take right from my context menu, so I can preview it. And if I preview it, this is going to come up, and we use the SharePoint Online or the Office Online tools to preview this. So very quickly, I can preview it. I can do some other actions. I may not check in, check out on my OneDrive, but I could share it, and I could look at who's sharing it with and kick off the sharing mechanism on SharePoint. I can rename the file. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this, and I've captured my thoughts in this document. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I could cut it, but just because for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go ahead and just copy it. And now I'm going to, instead of going to favorites, I could just navigate through favorites. I'm going to go up to all sites here just to show you the interface into some of the structure or content structure behind teams and groups. So I'm going to click on our teams and groups, and you'll notice that Harmony is going to enumerate the teams and groups that I have access to. And again, since Harmony is built on top of SharePoint, all the access, all the controls are SharePoint-based or Office 365-based. So if I don't have access to a team or I'm not a member, I'm not going to see it. If I don't have access to a team site in a second in SharePoint, I won't see that. So everything coming back is security trimmed. So I'm going to go into this construction one. And now you can see the different channels and the folders related to those channels. And just go into there, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste this. So very quickly, I promoted this document from my OneDrive and personal storage out to my team. And the idea here is that I'm going to use my team to kind of collaborate on this before we finalize this document. So my team is going to have access to this, but maybe I have some trusted colleagues that I want to go out and also share this. And I'm not sure why it's showing it twice, but I'll just stop sharing on one and just show you that you can manage this sharing and go back here and share. So I'm going to invite, a colleague that I want to get his opinion on this too, and then I can control whether he gets view edit to this, give him edit. And now that is also shared with him, so he becomes and has access to this. So right from inside of Outlook, I've been able to promote a document to teams, share it consistently, rename, preview it and all without ever having to change my context. I'm going to also, let's take this one step further, and now that we've got our team input on this document, I'm going to go ahead and copy this document again. Again, I could cut it. And this time I'm going to use favorites. And we're going to go out to a project site. And this is a SharePoint team site that you'll notice that we're enumerating and giving you access to all the document libraries out there. But beyond the document libraries, you also have access to task lists, custom lists, a contact list. So all your additional, if you have issue tracker lists, you can get to those and manage those right from the sidebar. So from here, I'm going to want to put this document that I just reviewed with my team. I'm going to put this out here, and I'm just going to go and paste it in the sidebar here. You can notice when we put things out on our team sites, this is where we start to want to capture and classify. This is what Ryan was talking about a little with the architecture of this. So your content types, your taxonomies you're building, any metadata. So we make it very easy for somebody to kind of check in a new document here. And I can go through the project term here or property as a term set, so I could go out and select it. Or as I become familiar with it, I just do a little type ahead, and now I kind of set this as that. So I'm going to put this is a training document, so I'm going to put it under training. And now the nice thing is if I've architected this with workflows and business processes on the background, this is where the reason I'm moving it to my team site is I need organizational view of this. I need to get maybe legal involved in this. I need to get maybe our compliance team to review this before it finalizes. So this is where I can now move it out there and add that and start to add that business process, those document workflows that you have built. Okay, so that's one way to get documents out there. Now let's look at another way. And one of the things that you'll notice in that when I did that, I had to put the properties in there. And one of the things that we continue to see is the more we ask our business users to do, the less engagement or adoption we get. So the more we can simplify that and make it really seamless for the end user becomes easier. So as I mentioned earlier, Harmony is going to integrate tightly with SharePoint. So you have access to all your views. And I'm going to just switch over to this group by view so I can reorganize my content. I'll expand this a little bit, but now you can see that as we had two required fields here, the project name and the document type, I'm going to take this claim submission and I'm just going to take this and hover over this tag and drop it there. And what's going to happen is Harmony is going to automatically tag this for you. So the more we can automate things for our end users, the better. Okay. I could have also taken the communication around this if I want this email and say, okay, you know, this is a communication that I want to save. It has some information or business relevance. I just drop it on the tag again, and it's going to upload that. To just finish and give you an idea, I don't want to just go into a feature and kind of demonstration here, but you can also go out to your File Explorer. And if you're moving things, we work with a lot of clients that are getting into Office 365 and SharePoint, and they're taking network file shares or public folders. And they have a lot of content out here that they either need to migrate or they need to empower their business users to kind of do what we call self-service migration. So I can go out here and I can grab multiple things, and let's go ahead and just put this in our finances. These are our lease agreements. So we'll drag and put it over here in finance. And the nice thing is I can bulk add this. So I can add it and it's going to get tagged automatically for me. You know. So I'll pause there for a second. And in that case, I guess I didn't hover over my tag long enough. So this is an example where I can just go ahead and now, if I need to, I can go ahead and just tag those real quick again. And that bulk tagging is one of the more powerful features inside of Harmony. So let's go. We've seen how to consume or publish a lot of content, save emails and all that. Let's take a look at the other side of this. So I have a lot of content out in Office 365, and I need ways to reclaim or find this content. So Harmony provides us many ways to do that. So one is, we already showed you, I showed you different views and all that. I'm going to go to an all view here, but let's go up to our top here and say, you know what, we want to search the document library for a claim number. So we're working on this project, we get an insurance claim come in, and now we got to go find relevant information in SharePoint to actually support that. Maybe somebody asked us for the claim summary on this or the claim submission. So I did a search of the library and I didn't find it. So I only found one document here. So let's go back up here and let's expand our search. So we're going to go and just say, let's search our entire SharePoint infrastructure. And now we find that out on our kind of e-file or our claim structure or team site. There's a document set out there or folder out there with information on it. And here's the claim submission that we're looking for. So if we want to go ahead and share that, all I need to do is open up Harmony or open up a new email. Maybe I want to send this to my team. And again, Harmony is available in all your windows, so it becomes very easy. And one thing you'll notice that I don't have to redo the search. It inherits where I was, so it becomes very easy for me to just simply drag and drop this in. And you're going to see this throughout the Harmony product where we support, and as I mentioned earlier, it's about pushing links and really cutting down on number of attachments, number of versions, eliminating document chaos with versions around. But I can go ahead and just drag and drop that in. In some cases, you know, there's always this case where I may need to send this out to an external party. So again, simple tools. All I do is hold the Alt key down and drag and drop, and we can create the attachment. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove this attachment for this demo, but put a little, so I don't get a warning that I know. And one of the things that with sharing links you get, and this has become a lot better with Office 365, SharePoint 2016, is that whole sharing infrastructure that's in there now. Is what Harmony is going to do for me is when I go out here, and let's make it a little simpler, I'm just going to share it with one person. Go out there. What Harmony will do for me is process that link and do kind of an ad hoc share for me. So I didn't have to go into the share and say, hey, let's make sure Sam has that. Harmony is going to check the system, make sure that all the recipients on the email have it, and if they don't, it's going to give you a way to actually share very quickly. Okay? So now that we've sent that to somebody, let's think about this from another way. So I'll finish up. We'll do some more search and filter and all that in a second. But on the recipient end of this, you're going to receive this email similar to this. And if the person happens to have Harmony installed, yeah, you could double click or click on this link and open it in Word or Excel or whatever the associated application is. But a lot of times we not only get this claim submission, but we need to go find that or open a container, and we need to navigate there. So Harmony gives you this way to just simply right click on that link, and now it's going to open that. And one of the things you'll also get is, you know, you can see these little indicators here. That's where it's showing that this email has been saved to SharePoint. I could also just click on the email and do an open in Harmony. It's going to navigate me right to that location. So again, all these little things just show the focus, and that's been the focus of Harmony for years, is this integration. So the focus on that user experience. So let's go ahead. I can right click again, get to all my actions again. So one of the things I want to show, and I'm going to use a quickly here, just jump over here, go back to my project team site. When we capture email, we do capture all the email header information for you. So this gives me a great example of how I can filter this. So again, I can use a view to go and see the subject from date received to fields, but I can also do column filtering like I do in Excel and kind of click on a couple of these and say, I want to filter that. I want to further filter this on the sender. And now I'm down to the email, and just double click on that. It's going to open right back up for me. So there's lots of ways. You can also filter by tags, and I'll show that in a second. So one of the things, and I know we're running up against time, and I want to make sure there's time for Q&A is, so I'll finish up here, but one of the new technologies I mentioned is Harmony has introduced this technology called Collage. And what Collage is doing for us is it's extending the Microsoft graph, the affinity, the frequency of documents and all that, all the signals we raise across all our different tools in Office 365. And we're extending that with the concept of topics. And these topics become the connectors to the underlying information. So right from the context of this email, I can see that a couple topics were extracted from this. And now if I want to click on Reading Station, I click, and it's going to further refine this, so I can now find additional emails related to the same topic, additional documents related to this, and then gives me quick ways to take action on that, whether I want to share it, open it, navigate to it. So that's one of the things. So this is something new that we're introducing this year, and it's going to allow you to discover that content across all your Office 365 tools. Now, from a practical standpoint, how does this enhance kind of saving and tagging content? So if we go, I'm going to clear my views here. But if I wanted to save this email, there's a good chance that if I'm working on this project or this claim, that I've saved emails before. Maybe I've saved it to different locations and all that. And what the topics allow me to do is, or allows Harmony to do, is recommend locations for you. So not only do you get your recent, but I can see that based off the tags or topics it found or extracted from this email, that I can go ahead and quickly save this. So I don't even need the sidebar open. I can just go, okay, yeah, I saved this, something about this claim on a Reading station in this location before. I'm going to do the same thing again. And Harmony is going to go ahead and save it for me. And then not only is it going to save this in that location, facilitate that saving, but it's also going to take those topics and add tags for me. So again, enriching my data. So you can think of this as kind of a continuous feedback loop where we're getting this information back into SharePoint and we're enhancing the tags automatically for you. So with that, I know I covered a lot. Again, we'll follow up in a little bit. And if you want to see more, we're happy to set up a session with you. But let's go. We got about 10 minutes left. Let me go ahead and I'm going to just bring up a final slide and we'll open it up for questions.
Great. So while I read you to the questions, I'm going to ask the audience if anybody here are you using Harmony? Whether you are using the free or the enterprise version, would be interested in a 30-day trial of the Harmony Enterprise feature. And while you're answering that, let me address the questions. Okay. So somebody says they find that their users really know very little about all these different tools, and they won't go learn on their own. They don't ask for help. They don't know there's a fix. So how do you recommend we get started? I think, Ryan, why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, sure, thanks. And that's it's a obviously a complicated question, and probably one of the reasons why people are attending the webinar is to get started on that. And I would say the most important thing for us, which really starts the process forward, is almost those initial meetings where we gather up the business users and we do two things. Or actually it's a bunch of things, but the big ones are, we let them know that we're there to start the process of helping them and making their lives better, and that they have feedback. We try to uncover some of the initial pains they have, like whatever usage in Office 365 they're trying now, what's not working. Maybe try to find some items to make their life a little bit better. And what we found is that by having these meetings sort of across the swath of the company, right, however the size of the company sort of relates, you start to figure out some common denominators and some things that we can do to start pushing the needle forward. And really what it's to get your arms wrapped around them and say, okay, look, we're here to help you. It's going to be a process, but we care about it. We're going to stick with it, and you should see some progress being made, and start there. So then the rest of the stuff kind of flows after that. But that's how I would how we always get started, as opposed to just dumping right in and solving one specific problem and walking away.
Great, thank you. Ron, do you recommend that we use Harmony with on-premise SharePoint and Exchange, or should we wait for Office 365?
So that's a good question. So first, many of our clients have started. We've supported SharePoint on-prem since the early days and still support SharePoint 2007, 10, and up, and cloud-hosted, different deployment models. So many of our clients have moved from SharePoint on-prem up to Office 365. So the idea, and maybe I can just show this real quick again, is that you're having this very consistent interface into all the SharePoint sites, regardless of whether it's in the cloud or on-prem. So as I'll click on this on-prem site, and you'll see that it enumerates and gives this your business user a very similar and consistent look into those. So I would say that it's good to get started now, as you would think I would say. But it's also that consistency. And what we also find is that, as I did in the demo, I cut and copied and cut things. It also helps people, migrate. So it takes some of the burden off IT from a migration standpoint, and you can leave some of the older sites up and running and let people go in and reference that material or move it to more active sites.
Thank you, Ron. Ron, you also were showing some tagging with the documents. Is that based on SharePoint taxonomy?
Yeah, so everything that everything we build is built off of the SharePoint infrastructure. So as I think this is important, as Ryan was talking about, architecture and design and content types and taxonomy, Harmony is going to inherit that. So you could start with a very simple document library with no taxonomy, or you could actually get into the full term set, term store, multiple content types and all that. So it is based off the SharePoint infrastructure, yes.
Thank you. Ryan, somebody's asking, on one of your slides you spoke about measuring success. How do you measure the social and the collaboration success?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's something people struggle with because it's not necessarily a math problem. So there are some techniques that we use and recommend, and I'll throw a few out there because I would say they work differently in different types of organizations. So you kind of have to be adaptable, right? But one is we try to do surveys within the Center of Excellence folks. So we do that to sort of benchmark and baseline. So before we do an intranet, let's say we'll kind of encourage the customer to build a set of survey questions to send around. And then after a certain amount of time is completed, we then send the same survey out and kind of measure the difference. That's one. We use analytics tools. So there's some decent but not great analytics tools out of the box in Office 365 to kind of show user usage and utilization. It's not great, but it's, again, more of a baseline, figure out what people are using, where and when. We do a lot of localized feedback. So when we offer trainings, we send them a very specific survey form that we review to make sure we're doing a good job. The customers can do these internally as well. So it's that continues that intentional feedback loop. And we try to use that to develop like rating scales, because what we're really trying to do is make sure we're measuring satisfaction too, on top of utilization. And then there's some third-party analytics tools like Cardiolog, et cetera, that you can use to plug into O365. Regular communication, right? I know that's not a formal measurement, but it's a way to measure by asking. And then one of the ones that's really starting to take up some space is gamification, and sort of award and recognize for activities that you want to push towards. So whatever your vision is, you kind of build a structure that gets people doing it, because people love the social aspect of it. A lot of them don't even know that Office 365 can support some of these features, but anywhere from employee recognition to the first person to help 10 different people or answer 10 different questions on this community site, to nominating each other. And there's some other third-party tools like You Earned It out there that people are using. So there's ways to kind of get people involved in as a part of the social aspect and the user engagement aspect of the culture and the organization. And what we really find is when people want to build intranets, it's not just to disseminate information and get organized. It's to keep employees engaged and happy. Engaged employees tend to be happier employees, and they tend to stay, right? And so they realize sort of the cost of employee turnover, and providing these tools is really important. So those would be the ones I would throw out the gate.
Great. I'm going to just have time for one more question. I'm hearing a lot of talk that centers on a custom-built SharePoint solution. What are some of your thoughts on the pre-built intranet and document management systems for SharePoint?
Oh, good question. So I'm assuming that means you're asking about third-party tools, the Unily and Akumina. Though I have nothing against those. Those are very good. You kind of have to identify what your needs are, and I'm not really sure what to say other than we do both, so we'll help people implement both. Some of them you don't really need any help implementing. Maybe you kind of need some help with the governance and the requirements and the surrounding pieces, but you don't need help with the build and the implementation. But I would say this, they provide a nice set of features and capabilities based on those companies' experiences of building intranets for other people in a custom way. So they've kind of boiled the menu down and said, here, we can sort of provide this as a software service. And they'll provide support. And from what I've heard, they do a good job. From our exposure to them, they do a good job. It really depends on what your needs are. And I would always include a third-party tool as part of my analysis when I was deciding how I wanted to structure an intranet. Part of the problem we found, or not problem, part of what we found is that people want to kind of build slowly, and those solutions don't necessarily work that way. They can, but if you want to add, like, 4 department sites right now, and you kind of want to then see how it goes, some of these, like Unily, they'll want to kind of do a bunch of stuff up front, I think, and kind of deliver the solution. And we prefer that sort of turn the crank model to add features over time as needed, so we can train on them slowly. It really depends on what you're trying to get done in your time frame, but I would definitely look at them.
Great. Ryan, Ron, thank you for that great presentation. Thank all of you for joining us today. You will receive an email with a link to view the recorded webinar again in a couple of days, and we look forward to meeting you again at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.